Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm very excited to bring you a look for the new, Transformers Shattered Glass Starscream. The reason this toy is kind of new is that he was actually meant to be the third toy released in the Shattered Glass line, but here, at least in the United States, got pushed back all the way to being the very last released. So, he's coming after Jetfire in order of release date, which is unfortunate because this is one of the ones I've been the most excited about. For anyone not in the know, Starscream is a redeco of the Siege Starscream toy, done up in Jetfire-inspired colors, and he also comes with these combining swords that you can see down here. Additionally, when bought through Pulse, like this one is, you get an exclusive variant cover comic, which is the third issue in the IDW Shattered Glass comic miniseries. So, if you've seen my reviews before, you know this goes. We're going to take a look at Starscream's packaging. We'll also look at his comic briefly. Then we'll open up the box, we'll take a look at the instructions, and then we'll see Starscream himself in both vehicle and robot modes. Naturally, I'll be doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today. And then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Starscream comes in your standard Shattered Glass packaging. It's very jagged-edged, like cut corner type packaging. Now, I mean cut corners like cheap, but I mean they literally cut out the corners here. Try to give it that broken glass motif of, being very fractured looking. That includes the front window, which has all these, sharp edges around the border here. You can see Starscream himself here looking very nice in his bright white with black and red accents. See the swords down here. Big Transformers logo with that purple to pink gradient. Shattered Glass logo, the name Starscream. Then you get a real close-up of his face and this artwork here. Not my favorite, admittedly. It looks, I don't know, a little plain, a little dull surprise. Kind of reminds me of like the Transformers Seibertron cartoon. Then on the side, we get a closer look at the artwork, which that looks a little better. I think the face is really the weak point of this artwork, because everything else looks pretty good. On the back, you get renders of the toy in both vehicle and robot modes. It takes 22 steps to transform. And like the other Shattered Glass toys, he gets a bit of flavor text here. Really tiny print, too. So it says, Starscream, a brilliant Decepticon scientist, grimly invents new weapons with the hope of one day bringing peace and an end to the war. So, Shattered Glass characters are typically the opposites of their normal universe counterparts. So this Starscream, stuck to his scientist roots and really does not have a taste for war at all. He is, however, vain, like his standard universe counterpart. So that is a constant that this iteration of SG Starscream, maintains. But he's, heroic in his vanity, I guess. So, I guess, think of him kind of like Skylings, right? Very full of himself, but would throw his life on the line to save somebody. And then here, we get a more full body shot of the artwork. It's just, I don't know, it seems a little different compared to the other ones. I can't really put my finger on it. I really think it's the face. It should have been a lot more expressive than what it is. Then, let's go ahead and move this out of the way, and we'll briefly look at this comic. Here's the exclusive Guido cover. At least, no, actually, is the cover Guidi? Maybe just the interiors. Where is it? I know it says it here somewhere. I'm so bad at this. Looks like they got a preview for King Grimlock in here, which is an interesting series. Look at that. Where's the cover gallery? I'm going to find it. Here it is. Oh, it's Joanna LaFuente, so I'm dumb. Sorry, Joanna, or ever actually watch this. So Joanna LaFuente cover looks really good. Now this is some good artwork, right? It shows Starscream, being this idealist. You can see that hope in his eyes as he comes crashing through this red Decepticon symbol. It does the same thing as the other variant covers where you get mostly a matte cover here, but the glass is, shiny here, the little shards of glass, and then you got like some foil here for the logo. Looks really nice. Back of the cover just says Pulse, and a quick little flip through. I don't want to spoil too much. But yeah, Starscream's a pretty major player in the story arc, and again, I've said it before, but I do recommend this comic series. I think it's one of the better ones that IDW's put out here in the last few years. Here are the instructions for Starscream. You can see a nice render of him right here on the front. A little plain, he's just kind of standing in a neutral pose with no weapons. Kind of lame. You see his name, Shattered Glass logo, Transformers logo. Open it up. This shows you how to set them up out of the box, because when they pack these Siege Seekers, they always have this little thruster bit, like flipped up. And then this shows you how to have him wield his weapons, have his null rays either in his hands or on his shoulders, and then have him wielding his sword as either one combined blade or split into two smaller blades. And then we go to the transformation. Continues around on back. Now, one thing that's interesting is that his transformation's slightly different from the regular Siege toy. So normally, with the Siege toy, his null rays go on the 5mm ports here under his wings. In this case, they go right back to the same shoulder ports that they're normally attached to in robot mode, and then the swords go into the ports on the wings. So he's a little bit different in his configuration. Not nearly to the extent of like Megatron, but you know, they had to move the blasters to make his swords work. So just neat little bit of info there. So I do appreciate that. I like that it's not just like a carbon copy reprinting of the Siege Starscream instructions, but is instead, you know, something unique and tailored to this release. Now here's Starscream's vehicle mode, and I gotta say, I think this looks really nice. The way the colors just pop, like there's such a high contrast between them, and this really bright white, except interestingly for this top section here, where it's actually a little bit more of a, got a bit of a cream quality to it. I'm not sure why it's different. And you can see some other spots like on the forearms and stuff. I don't know if that's intentionally like mixing up the two tones of white or not sure. Kind of would have preferred if it was all one color in this case. Then you get this, you know, nice red highlights here. And you get some black, which is like a very shiny black. Get the red Decepticon symbols, a nice like ice blue cockpit. Then here you can see his weapons attached with the null rays on the shoulders, swords on the wings. And I mean, he looks really good in this mode. Honestly, like, I really dig the way this came out. Now, some people, when this toy was revealed, were wondering why they used the Siege version of Starscream to make this toy instead of, like, the newer Earthrise one. And the reason for that is that the original Shattered Glass Starscream toy from the Collectors Club was a recolor of the Transformers Seibertron Starscream, whose alternate mode was maybe loosely, I'll say, based on the Tetrajet design from the first episode of Transformers. Well, the Siege Starscream is the Tetrajet design. Now, they had to take some liberties to make the engineering work, but it is much more, you know, directly based on that first episode. So it makes sense to use that version of the mold to try to recreate the club-exclusive character. The new Shattered Glass line hasn't, you know, 100% followed the conventions of the old toy line, mostly due to, you know, mold availability and things like that. But I think this is a really nice nod to it, and I think it looks really, really good for this character. I'm actually very happy that they went with this one. I also like the Siege Starscream mold more than I do the Earthrise one. Really, for the robot mode itself, it's just a better action figure. It's got better posability, it's more dynamic looking. The Earthrise one, while it's very G1 accurate, is a little bit more of a brick than this toy. So I think this was a very solid choice. Okay, now for comparison, we have the Siege Starscream toy, which is the first use of this mold, and, you know, is obviously the character this guy's based off of. Now you can see the difference in aesthetic here is very plainly obvious. The Siege toys, you know, they were known for having a very battle damage appearance, and Starscream is one of the most extreme examples of that because he's absolutely slathered in this like dark gray battle damage stuff, which you know, a lot of people are really torn on the battle damage stuff. For me personally, I didn't mind it as long as it was done well, and I never really thought that Starscream's was done very well. He looks more dirty than damaged. Like, he looks like he, you know, fell into a vat of oil or something, and just, you know, he looks all just, I don't know, grungy. The new Starscream here is obviously very clean looking and is almost demonstrating just how much of a polar opposite he is to his positive universe counterpart. But it is nice to see the two together. They obviously have very different paint schemes, which is a good thing in my opinion. I do like it when recolors, you know, set themselves apart from their predecessors. The patterning is almost completely different between these two. And then we also talked about the weapon placement. So the original placement, you can see here, it has the null rays right on the wings, whereas here they're moved to the shoulders so that the swords can go on the wings. So it does help set them apart a little bit. It's a small detail, it's nothing huge, but it does, you know, make it feel like you're getting something a little bit different. because unfortunately not all of the Shattered Glass toys went that extra mile to get any sort of retooling or added accessories. The first two, which were, actually Selects toys, the Optimus and Ratchet, they were just straight recolors. Then the technically final toy released in this wave, Jetfire, as awesome as he is also a straight recolor. So I do appreciate when they throw in some extra goodies, whether it's new tooling, added weapons, parts, anything like that to help set them apart. Now here is another very interesting comparison. So I don't have the original Shattered Glass Starscream toy. I didn't have those means back when, that was current. But I do have FunPub's second go at SG Starscream, which is the Combiner Wars Shattered Glass Starscream from their subscription service. Now this toy, first of all, I think is really cool looking. It uses the previously Takara only Starscream head for this mold, but it does in really cool colors, very Jetfire inspired ones, just like this guy. It's a cool, clear red combiner hand here. Unfortunately, severely underutilized. There was no accompanying fiction for this toy, really. I think he got a tech spec card, but that was about it. He wasn't used in anything because it was at the very end of FunPub's licensing. And despite being a Combiner Wars toy, the details of his combination are very skimpy. Now, officially, semi-officially, I don't know. I don't even know if you can call it official because there's so little info. He's supposed to be part of the Combiner Modulus, who has no fiction and doesn't even have official artwork or stock photography. In fact, in the instructions for this guy, they just use a picture of Predicus in place of Modulus. It's really weird. But he was supposed to combine with Combiner Wars Scattershot, as well as the Buck unexclusive Ratchet and Medics toys, which, there's maybe a handful of people that actually have, the Ratchet and Medics, because you can only choose one of the customization class. And then also Combiner Wars Rook. So real hodgepodge, it's just general red or white colored heroic characters thrown together in a combiner. I would have liked to see what that concept was all about, because we don't know anything about it other than it maybe exists. So yeah, really, really big shame that this guy wasn't utilized more, because he's really cool looking. I always love the interesting kind of dark white or pearly white used for the cockpit that actually contrasts with the rest of the plain white body there. Really nice. Obviously, much more Earth-based alt mode than your previous use and future use here. But it's a neat little bit of history that will be likely mostly forgotten about, sadly. Now we get to see Starscream in his robot mode. Now the instructions actually tell you to put the swords in the opposite hands, but personally, when I, set figures up for display or pose them, I like it where the solid side of the weapon, as in the non-hollow side, like that, so it's hollow, faces the outside, but you can do whatever you want. So I'll say this character, despite being based off of an evil character, looks very heroic. Those Jetfire colors really just do a number to make Starscream look like a, white knight type character. Plus the fact that he's got swords, that helps too. His tolerances are all spot on. He doesn't have the chest that, tends to pop off like the original did, which, honestly, besides the original Starscream, I think that issue's been more or less fixed. Probably, honestly, stop bringing it up at this point. But just know that his chest is good. He does have those tighter fits for the forearms where they plug into the legs and the wings plug onto them that you saw on the Netflix Hotlink toy. But it's not too bad. You just got to kind of carefully wriggle things free. Now, one thing that's very interesting, and I didn't realize this till I got him out of package, is that his face sculpt is not actually the same sculpt used for Starscream. It is the slightly modified, more grimacing face that was used for the Siege Skywarp figure. So I didn't realize that change was made till I got a close enough look at him. And now, that expression might seem a little weird for such a charismatic, loyal character like Starscream, but if you read the comics and, kind of where in the story it all revolves around, it makes sense for Starscream to look a little more grim these days. I don't want to spoil much, but, he's seen some hard times. So he looks really good, poses really good, and we get the two swords, which I'll carefully pull from his hands. Now, the handles are painted on these swords, so be careful. Try not to scratch the paint. I would just carefully wriggle them free from the grip. Now you can take these two blades and they plug together like this. Now what's smart is there are two separate handles, but one handle you can see is much longer than the other. So that way once you combine them, you can slide this all the way down. Actually, I think that's too far. Okay, not all the way. I want to back it out a little bit because you don't want his knuckles to push the blades apart. So something about that much. So you can get him wielding more of a, great sword, which I think I prefer this. I think this looks a lot cooler. Kind of harkens back to Armada Starscream and him wielding the Star Saber. This isn't shaped too dissimilarly from the cartoon Star Saber. Plus, having the one big sword does help capture that white knight motif just a little bit more. So whether you choose to display him one sword, two swords, have his swords put away on his wings or something, he just looks pretty fantastic. Here's our robot comparison with the Siege Starscream. And, same mold, except for the face. Face is different. Very, very different colors. Now, to be fair, G1 Starscream's colors, they're not really indicative of what you'd think of as an evil character. They're honestly almost close enough to Autobot colors to make him, look like a good guy. I mean, if you just put Autobot symbols on him, would he look evil? I don't know. But we recognize G1 Starscream as an evil character, despite, the brighter colors used for him. So, seeing that contrast between, our scheming trickster and then this valiant war hero, it's really interesting because they both come from the same mold, but it's just kind of astonishing in a way what some new colors and, a knightly sword can do for a toy. Now, this also reminds me that this is the 9th, or arguably 10th if you count the Perfect Finish version, use of the Siege Starscream mold. And, that does lead to concerns that eventually the, mold itself is going to get worn out. You might see some issues. But this guy so far isn't demonstrating that. And I think we owe that to Netflix, because apparently when the Netflix toys, especially the third wave of Netflix toys, were released, they seem to have gone and kind of spruced the molds up a little bit and tightened things up, which is why, some of his tolerances are a bit tighter than, the earlier Seekers. So maybe that refurbishing helped out a lot and, kind of extended the life of this mold, because we're not really done yet. There's nothing that's been announced as far as future plans for this mold, but there are still a few characters that would be suited using this. We're still missing all of the Welcoming Committee, minus Red Wing, if you count him as part of the Welcoming Committee. So, we got Hotlink, Bitstream, Sunstorm, who all appeared in the cartoon on Seibertron pre, Earth forms. So the Siege mold would make the most sense for them. Doesn't mean that if those characters come out, they will use Siege. Sunstorm has traditionally been made from, more G1-based Starscream, like Earth mode Starscream. So if we get those characters, they may just use the Earthrise mold. I don't know. It wouldn't really be accurate if we're going for, that running theme of introducing the characters from that Cybertronian background, but we'll see what happens. Personally, I prefer to have them use the Siege mold for those guys. I mean, it's just a few more times, and, they're all pretty unique and interesting-looking characters, so I think they should get the Siege treatment. If they do end up going with Earthrise, it'd be a bit disappointing, but at least they aren't completely forgotten. I mean, they went as far as to give us all these obscure Seekers, and somehow the Welcoming Committee is just conspicuously absent from the lineup. Here's a shot of the Combiner Wars SG Starscream again, and I'll say he's not nearly as elegant looking as this new toy, and unequivocally is definitely not the superior figure here. That goes to our new Voyager class. He's just something that's neat to have, right? He's a Shattered Glass Starscream that can be used in a Combiner, and give that Combiner a really cool glowing red fist. So, like many of the not traditionally combining characters that were done, in Combiner Wars as part of Combiner, he's best served as part of a Combiner more so than just a regular figure. I mean, all of those, non-Scramble City characters were just retools of Scramble City characters anyway, so none of them were very accurate to anything. And, because of that, they all look kind of off. I mean, he definitely looks off with his super wide shoulders and everything. The face sculpt, really, I mean, it is meant to be Starscream. This was sculpted specifically to be that character, but it's not like any Starscream I've ever seen. It's very odd looking. So, yeah, I love that I have this toy. I think he's really cool. He's a nice little novelty. But I would gladly retire him as my de facto Shattered Glass Starscream. Like, this is my guy right here. That is the one that I would, point to if somebody said, hey, show me Shattered Glass Starscream. So again, that really makes it such a shame that this guy, really doesn't have a combiner that's known at all or even easy to build. Because again, you got to have 2 custom class figures that are kind of mutually exclusive of each other to even make that combiner happen. So this poor guy, he's just always going to be kind of standing there as the ugly duckling, never really fitting in with anything. And this is going to complete our look at the new Shattered Glass Starscream. This guy, easily one of my favorites in the subline. Even though he's not doing a whole lot new, aside from having the swords, he just looks so good. He's kind of like Jetfire, right? The Jetfire toy was just a straight recolor, but he's such a good-looking recolor, you almost don't even care. And then, of course, Starscream goes above and beyond because he gets those really cool swords that combine. Really, really great toy. I always wanted the original, Shattered Glass Starscream, but just never had the funds at the time to get it. And the Combiner Wars one, while cool, was a poor substitute. So I'm really excited to get this guy. And just like Megatron, I think he makes a really strong first showing for these SG Decepticons. Now, there's some rumors, leaks, what have you, of, a second wave of Shattered Glass coming. One of those is supposed to be a Shattered Glass Soundwave, so that'll help fill out our Decepticon ranks a little more. I can't remember off the top of my head what or if, there are any other Decepticons besides Soundwave coming. Hopefully. I'd like to see that, because they are really outnumbered here. But yeah, I mean, this Starscream just looks fantastic. He really does. The colors are just amazing on this guy. So I think he's totally worth picking up. I mean, if you have any interest in Shattered Glass at all, or you just like cool Starscream toys, anything like that, I think you'll be very happy with this guy. He just looks great in both modes. He's got a lot of, posability, all that. I mean, I always love the Siege Starscream mold because it's just a great action figure beyond being, a Transformer with the butterfly joints and the shoulders and all that crazy stuff. So I would totally pick this guy up. I think you'd be very happy with him. Of course, that is just my take on the Starscream. So now I want to know what you guys think. Are you excited to pick this up? Or if you have it already, do you like it? Or do you not want this toy for some reason? Either you don't care about Shattered Glass, you don't like the Siege mold. Believe it or not, there are people out there that don't like the Siege mold. I guess we can't all have good taste. So really, any and all feedback is always welcome in the comment section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the brand new Transformers Shattered Glass Starscream. With all that said, I will see you next time.